Welcome to Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel. My name's Paul McDonald, and joining me across the screen, as always, is Britt Mooney. Hey, Britt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good. Have you enjoyed our month diving into the archives?
I have actually really enjoyed it. We actually did a couple good episodes back then.
I know
I
we were pretty good, even in our youth.
I remember liking them when we did them. But sometimes when you are a creative, and sometimes when you go back and read something or look at something you used to do, and you cringe, right? You got the cringe moment. And I didn't feel that way. I mean, some of the audio is different, and I can tell some of that stuff, but
You also didn't listen to the unedited version. You might have cringed a little bit
I might have. I might have. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for making it sound better.
Well, it's what is it they say about any book is it's not really ever finished. You just stop working on it.
That's
Because I'm
totally
sure
true.
you could go back to the stuff you've written and be like, oh, I wish I want to change this sentence or this paragraph or move it around, and
Oh
you're never
man.
really done.
Well, and I have a couple friends that have been working on the same project for 20, 30 years. And so that's part of the issue. Like at some point you're just done. At some point, do
Right.
something different. I mean, you just have
Just
to
move
move
on.
on.
This is as good as it's going to get. So this week
Right?
on the podcast, we're talking about Say Anything, which is Britt's number one all-time favorite movie. On the podcast, Britt talks about why. We talk a lot about the Dare to Be Great situation and how Lloyd pursues that through the whole movie and what it means to be a man. But we didn't want to step on the toes of our podcast. So we're going to take a line. We're dancing here. We don't want to step on any toes. We took a line that I think we touched on, but really didn't hammer very well, or maybe I edited it or something. But at the very end, when Lloyd and Diane are in the plane getting ready to leave, they're going to London, where Diane says, nobody thinks this will work. And Lloyd says, you just described every success story. And when I brought that idea up, Britt's like, that's great, because that's what we've just been talking about for the last half hour before we hit the record button. So Britt, why, we'll talk about why this was a great movie, but why this line, why does this line jump out to you?
Well, and he says, you just described every great success story. And And before we get into some of that, I think we need to define what success is, right?
Yep.
What is success? Like for some people, I guess a success story could be that they got a job. Right? I mean, we all have different sort of levels and idea of success. And yet I think the stories that inspire us, the stories that they make movies about, are the kind of stories where someone has an idea and it's so crazy to everybody else that no one really knows what to do with it, you know? And those are the kind of stories that people make movies about and write books about. They have there's the old adage about fiction, writing a fiction story, fiction should be believable. Nonfiction
Right.
should be unbelievable. Like if you're writing a nonfiction, if you're writing a story about something that actually happened, like it should be something that makes people go, no way, that didn't happen. Because it's that sense of awe, and it's
Yeah.
and it's really important that we say, hey, this is something that happened, and it sounded so crazy to everybody else, and but that's an important part, especially about being creative, and that's an important element to following God. We were talking beforehand about the book, Say Yes, a little shameless plug here, but part of the story is of saying yes to God is saying yes to things that are unique and outside the box. And I say in the book, and I say to people all the time, God doesn't ask us to do things that we could do in our own power.
Right.
God asks us to do things that he has to do through us, because then at the end of our story, all we can do is look back and say, God did it. I didn't do that. Like all I did was say yes.
That idea that nobody thinks this will work. By the way, that's repetitive in the Bible. Abraham and Sarah, you're going to have a kid. No, we don't think that'll work.
Right?
Gideon and his 300.
Right?
Moses against the edge of the Red Sea. David against Goliath. Jesus against the cross. Like nobody
Right.
thinks this would. The disciples thought it was over. Nobody thought it would work. But
Right.
that's when God shows up.
Yes, God places us in impossible situations often, or leads us into them, not because he doesn't like us, but because he wants our story to be one of miracle, wonder, and adventure. And to do that, just like every great story that we read, you have to put the main character in some sort of danger and risk,
Right.
and they have to reject
Where it
the
seems
call,
like
right?
there's
the
no
hero's
way
journey.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no way out. And they have to feel hopeless. And one of the reasons why we do this podcast is because those stories appeal to us, and we can see some sort of universal truth in them. Like, this is how we live our story. And that doesn't mean that God is necessarily going to ask you to move to Africa, right? That was always the fear when people were like, when I was in high school, if I say yes to God now, he'll send me to Africa. Like, that was a horrible thing. And I remember being a kid going, that sounds awesome. Let's go.
Yeah.
But
I still have to convince my wife not to move to Africa. It's like, no, I don't think it's going to work yet. We have kids here who need us.
Right. My wife is the same. Like, every now and then, it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but we look at each other. Can we move back to Korea or move back overseas somewhere? Like, but there's an adventure part of it that's risky. There's the unknown. But here's what we know is that God is for us, that he loves us, and he's asking us to go into things. And that could be a relationship. It doesn't have to be like a new career. It doesn't mean like you change your career, maybe. I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. It looks a lot of different ways. For every person, it's unique in that sense. But the commonality is that he's going to ask you to do things that you can't do in your own power, and that's naturally going to look a little crazy to other people, and they'll say, no one thinks this is going to work. Well, I'm so glad that God doesn't operate by the way the world thinks and works. Like, that's not who he is. He acts according to his love and his power. And that gives us the kind of stories that inspire us, inspire others. And so I love that. And we could go into all sorts of creative people who had an idea that were rejected, a billion times. Frank Herbert with Dune, like, it was rejected how many different times?
U2 got so many rejection letters before they got signed to their first deal.
Right.
Like, I took pictures. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they had the rejection letters that they got back from these record companies. Right? And I took pictures because, like, if U2 was had to go through that rejection, then why would we?
Yeah.
Every dream has its doubters.
Right? And the Beatles.
Why do we think ours would be any different? We don't want to watch stories that are different. That's boring.
It is. Yeah. The Beatles were told they couldn't sing. Someone told the Beatles they couldn't sing. Some record executive said that they couldn't sing, and they couldn't play their instruments, right? And they were amazing, but they had to fight through that too. But the core of it is to me, there's two parts of it. Is God really calling you to do it? You have to hear from him. This can't just be your idea, because you'll quit on that really, really quickly. And you have to have brothers and sisters who you will have to have some people because they had each other. Lloyd and Diane at least had each other in that, right? No one thinks this will work, but we do, right? And so there has to be some level. It might be one or two. Jesus had the 12. He had the 3, and he had the 1. Like, Jesus had those close to him that when things got a little crazy, they were like, all right, let's go die with him. Like they were committed. We all need, this can't be a big group, but we need at least a couple people who will help us not to quit and remind us of the call that God has placed on us. And so those are my things.
go check out our full episode of the Say Anything podcast, the Say Anything or Say Anything 2.0. Can't remember what I labeled it as.
Say it again.
But we talk about all the things. Say anything again. I should have done that. But and ask yourself, who's telling you that this will never work? Could be your own mind.
Yeah.
It could be the lies of the enemy in your head. It says this will never work. But if God's calling you to it, then nothing he purposed can stand against it. And every great story has to go through doubts and fears. And I don't know if you guys needed that today. I did.
Yeah.
I went to bed last night. My wife's like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm okay.
Right.
And she was too tired, so we didn't talk about it. But that idea that it's like, I just feel looking at, I don't know how any of this is going to work. And it's really easy to give up. So just say, yeah, when nobody says it's going to work, well, God, you're doing this. You're telling me you made this happen. So I'm trusting you to make whatever happen, to end up where you want it to be. And then that'll be the success.
Yeah.
Whether that's
exactly.
in relationships or finances or subscribers or likes or whatever. So check out our full episode on Say Anything. It's good stuff.
Yep.
We're starting back next week with live stuff, not necessarily live because it's all recorded, but new stuff. We're taking our break back. We're going to get back, and actually Britt and I are going to actually spend more time together coming up. So that'll be fun. So check out the stuff, do the things, like our podcast, like our YouTube channel, follow us, subscribe, share, do the things. All the links are down below. Hope you enjoyed this mini conversation that turned out to be not quite as many. They never do. But go check out our podcast, and hope you join us next time here on Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel.